I bought this at a shop in Pinehurst. This is a super old golf ball. Look at that guy. Look at this. The wrapper is sticking to it. How far are we going to go? Is this going to be the next step in professional golf? This golf ball from like 1950 something. Look at that bad boy. Is that where we're heading? It's blurry. Can't see it. There you go. Are we heading there? Is that the next step? The USGA and the R&A are made an announcement of a potential rollback. Now, this is a current Pro V1X 2023 model, and this is, well, much, much older. And what they want to do is potentially have what they call a bifurcation of golf rules so that professionals have to play a rollback version of the golf ball. Like that it goes 20 yards shorter during testing. So you're going to go from whatever you're currently using to what they're saying a version closer to like in the 1990s. So a little newer than this one, but you get the idea. This is, in my opinion, an absolute ridiculous idea. Now, they've been talking about this for a number of years, and I know that at least Titleist I know they have done testing on rollback balls for years. I was out there at TPI like in 2018, and they were doing some secret testing of rollback golf balls. So these manufacturers have kind of potentially seen this coming for a long time, and they've been, hopefully more of them than not, have been preparing for this potential rule change, which I hope does not happen. I'm going to give you my 10 reasons why I think this is a huge, huge mistake. And I hope the USGA and the R&A watch this, or at least contemplate and think about these reasons. And I think there might be many more. List yours below what you think about the potential rule change. And I'm going to go through it. From 10 to 1, we'll go through. Stay. I'll leave that there for you to look at. Now, what they did and what they're proposing is that they're going to test the ball at 127 mile per hour club head speed and with a certain spin rate, and it needs to be 20 yards shorter, right, than other balls. And that would be the ball that elite amateurs and professionals would use in competition and for competitions that adopt this rule change. So that means they would be playing that ball, and everybody else, the regular players, would just play whatever they wanted. So what's interesting is that they're doing the testing at 127 mile per hour club head speed, which is weird because that's 12 miles per hour faster than the average tour swing. So I don't know why they have to test it at that swing speed. No one's swinging it that fast out on tour. Usually you kind of roll it back 120 or 115 is kind of the average. So that's what's weird. Needless to say, that's what they're doing. Now, for perspective, currently today, 2023, there are about 28 players who average over 300 yards off the tee. Compare that to 20 years ago, there were 2 players who averaged over 300 yards off the tee. What's interesting, though, is that the average is only 10 yards farther today than it was 20 years ago. So although more players are hitting it farther, they're only getting 10 yards on average more distance. So they're really not getting a ton more distance. They're just more people doing it. And you can attribute that to potentially just exercise, health and fitness, better technology in swing speed training. So more people have access to that. More people are training. More people are working out. More people are taking care of their body. So they're hitting it. More people are hitting it farther. Not necessarily that much farther. So, all right. That being said, here are my top 10 reasons for this being ridiculous. All right. Number 10, one is just for starters, initially, you're going to have more disqualifications, accidental DQs. You accidentally are going to play the wrong ball. You're going to have the wrong ball in your bag, and you're going to use it, and then you're going to be, I played 4 holes with the wrong ball. So, although that's not going to happen that much, it's going to happen. So, you're going to have a high-level pro just play the wrong ball, didn't realize it's going to be confusing. So, I'm sure they're going to take into account for that, make sure that those balls are in play, and hopefully but you're going to have some accidental balls slip in by mistake. And so guys are just going to lose money right out of the gate on that deal. So that's unfortunately going to be a huge, huge problem. Number 9 is this. This is going to be a huge, huge disadvantage for the shorter players off the tee. Now, everybody's going to be a little bit shorter, but when you're taking a guy who swings at, let's say, 125, right? And he rolls back 20 yards, when you dial back that swing to a guy that swings at like 110, I think that 20 yards isn't going to be equal. It's going to be much, much less. So it's not like everybody's going to get minus 20 yards. Some guys are going to get minus 40 yards. And that's going to be just horrible for a guy who's kind of shorter off the tee box. And that's just not right. That's not fair, because that guy, he can get it out there. He might have a 7 or 6 iron into the green, and he's facing a guy that has a wedge currently. But when you roll it back, okay, now that wedge guy has a 7 iron and 7 iron has a 3-wood hybrid, that, the average distance to the hole is not equal at that point. Whereas you might be 30 feet from the hole with your 7 iron on average. Now you're going to be, 60 feet. You're going to miss way more greens. So that poor shorter guy off the tee is going to be at a huge, huge disadvantage more later than currently. Number 8 on my list is this, and I don't know if people are talking about this or not. What about women's golf? What about elite women amateurs and women professionals? They're not hitting it so much farther today than they were 20 years ago. There's some that do for sure, but that's from working out and health. Like, where does the women's game stack up on this? All of a sudden, we're going to back them up 20 yards? I mean, that's where's that going to live? So professional women's golf, gosh, it's already like they're already considerably shorter, and they're not making golf courses obsolete at all. So are they going to be able to use this ball, or do they have to go to something like this? Are they also being the rollback? That's why I think now we have men's rules, men amateur rules, women rules. Like, it gets confusing. So where is that on the list? Also, next on my list, number 7 would be this. At what point, like, you're going to make a transition from this ball to a different ball? So your whole life, junior golf, working your way up the ranks, high school, all of a sudden you got to change a ball and you get a rollback. That's a totally different game now. Now what you're used to gets thrown out the window and you got to do something different. So there's going to be a huge problem you're going to face at some point. So do you just start using rollback ball from a child? That's where the transition is going to be a disaster. So it's going to ruin people's game. They're going to be used to playing this style of game, and then they have to transition to that style of a game. Forget it. I think that's going to be too big of a transition for a lot of people, and they're confident. It's all confidence at some point, especially as a junior, getting confidence, and you got this mental kind of approach to the game, and then all of a sudden, whoop, it's gone. And that's going to just jack a lot of like the youngsters up when they have to make that transition. Next on my list is this. There's other answers than this. The golf ball isn't the answer to making golf courses, protecting them from becoming obsolete. There's more answers. For example, one would be grow the grass. Just make the rough longer. Bring it in. Make the fairway skinnier. Make the rough taller. If you want more of a penalty or more of a risk for hitting it farther, then the farther you get from the tee box, the taller the grass grows. They don't really do that. The rough is just this high, but it should be higher the farther you go. So that's an easy solution right there. Just make it, if you're shorter off the tee, great. If you take an iron off the tee, we'll make it a little bit easier for you. But if you want to challenge this hole with the driver, well, you better hit the fairway, because it's going to be more penalizing the farther you get from the center of the fairway. That's easy to do. Change the mowing height of your thing. Just lift that. My little mower just go from 6 to 8, and it gets higher. It's pretty simple. You don't have to do all this. So I think that is another answer, and it could solve a lot of problems easily. Your next thing on the list, number 5, is this. What about your clubs? For example, like you dial in your driver because of the ball you hit. Like you're getting this type of reaction. So you got your driver, you got all the specs, perfect, and you're playing your tournaments, you're doing your all of a sudden, you got a new ball. So all these pros are going to have to like reconfigure their entire bag. Their driver, their whole thing is going to be need to be readjusted and calibrated for the new ball. Gosh, Rory already struggles getting a new driver every couple years because there's a transition, there's a learning curve. He doesn't like his current driver, and he's blaming his poor driving on the driver, not himself. But regardless, when you get a new ball, changes everything again. It spins more. It does different stuff in the wind. You're going to have to adjust, and that's going to cause a lot of problems. And it's going to, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to leave and not qualify and drop off the face of the map in terms of professional golf because of the golf ball situation. Moving on, number 4, we touched on this a little bit, but because of that and the club configuration, it's a totally different game. There's a dramatic difference in the game versus the 1990s, where you're going to play a shorter ball, versus today. It's a whole different game. Think about it. Like, you're able to do different things with the green speeds and the contours and everything because of where the golf ball, what it does. And you're able to play certain shots because of what the golf ball does. But now the golf ball does different things. You got to transform your shots. Are you hitting it higher or lower into the green? Can you bump and run? Like, golf course architecture has over the last 20, 30 years has transitioned because of the golf ball. So now you roll that back, and now these courses have to be played a completely different way. Whereas you need to run it up now because the golf ball's reacting differently. You can't run it up because they've designed the course a specific way that makes that playing style obsolete. So that's going to change the whole thing, the whole game. You've got to now play it differently. And so what you're used to doesn't work. And that's, again, players, professional, high-level players are going to disappear because they play a game a certain way, and now you're changing the rules on them in the middle of a career. That's like saying in chess, hey, the knight goes forward 2 and over 1, or over 2 and up 1, but now you can move your knight diagonally, just like the bishop, right? So the bishop and the knight do the same thing. You're like, whoa, we're in the middle of a game here. You can't just change the rules on me and expect things to be okay. That's not going to work. So your grandmaster rating is going to be severely altered because they changed the rules on you. Number 3, and this is huge. These are top 3 in my opinion. Number 3, it's just going to be boring. Gosh, sometimes golf is boring, but man, now these guys are just going to hit it a lot shorter, and it's just not going to be as exciting to watch. There's going to be less people going for stuff. Oh, I used to go for it here, but well, the ball doesn't go 20 yards farther, so I can't go for it. I'm going to lay up. Think about like the 17th hole at TPC, the Phoenix, in the Phoenix, the Waste Management. Like they're going for the green. Now what? Now no one's really going to go for the green. It's not going to be as exciting. There's the Dell match play where there's a driver, you carry it, you put it on the green. That's exciting. There's water. Now, most people are going to go lay up. It's just not going to be as exciting as it was. So, congratulations. You're making the game more boring. There's tournaments that are already suspect because of the boring factor, and now they're even more boring because I don't get a long ball every now and then. So, great job with that one. I hope that in and of itself should eliminate the rollback. Number 2, all right. The game currently is already different between pros, elite pros, and the rest of us. And now you're adding this to make it even more different. Now, how do I judge myself versus a pro? How do I know if I could potentially try to qualify for a U.S. Open? How do I know? Because let's say I'm just a recreational player. I'm playing. I'm having a great time. I'm scoring really well. But now I want to try to qualify for an Open, a U.S. Amateur, a Mid-Amateur. Where's the line? Like, at what point do I have to start playing the other ball? And here's how the game is already different. The setup of a PGA level course versus I go to the same course. I get to play Torrey Pines whenever I want. Whenever I go, it's very, very different than when the pros play. One, the pros aren't ever in a footprint in a bunker. I am. Now, a lot of times like, hey, if you're in a footprint, take it out of the bunker, right? Like we have kind of just common courtesy rules, but there's also that they have 150 people looking for their golf ball, so they're not losing golf balls in the rough like we do. And like, where's my golf ball? So like, it's already different for the pros. They get perfect greens, perfect conditions, perfect everything, and I don't. I get kind of wacky fairways, unraked bunkers, and the green speeds and the purity of the green is not nearly what they face. Now, they are also playing more difficult courses, but in a perfect setup. Most amateurs playing easier courses on a less quality setup. So there's already differences in the game, but at least I have the same equipment, access to the same balls, access to the same places, so I could sort of evaluate myself versus them. So the game's already different. Now you want to add this element. I'll never know. Most players will never know where they stack up against the best players in the world because we're playing different gear. And that is going to be a mess to figure out. And you're never going to see like Cinderella story qualify and have an opportunity because he's not playing the same stuff. And then when the guys go and they try to qualify for something, all of a sudden they've got to deal with the other things that we talked about. Their gear. It's a different game. Oh my gosh, what does my driver do now? Where do I lay up? Do I go for it? I don't know. Now they're a disaster. Forget it. It's never going to happen. And then number 1 on the list, this is probably the most important thing that that everybody has to think about. This will be, number 1, a manufacturer's nightmare. It was going to be a disaster because, okay, so Titleist is a golf ball company. All right, so whatever. They're just going to have to make the pros a certain golf ball and make it available. So they're going to make a new ball for all those people. And then the rest of the balls for you. It's like, hey, and then what do they give me? What do they give me, like the average player? Okay, what do you get? Can you have any kind of ball now? Here's a ball that goes 1,000,000 miles. Or is there a rule for us that's like, this is for you? This is legal for everybody except the pros and the elite amateurs at this specific moment in time. This is legal for you, and now it's not. It's going to be a little tricky to figure out. So the manufacturers not only have to create, they all do. If you're making a ball and you want the pros to play it, you've got to like reconfigure your manufacturing plant. You've got to do all the thing. And now you're like, think about PXG. They just came out with the ball, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, great. Now we have to go, our R&D department has to do everything different now to roll it back 20 yards. Okay, all right, here we go. Forget it. It's going to be a huge, huge disaster for manufacturers, but not just for the ball, for the clubs as well. Okay, this driver goes with this ball, but for the rest of you, we got to make a whole new set of drivers that's going to go with that ball. These drivers are going to work for you, but now the pros, well, they're going to have to use different gear that work better with that negative 20 yards. And then can they configure a scenario where, although the ball is rolled back 20 yards, we made a driver that gives the pros 20 more yards that still is conforming. But what happens is when you use that driver with the good ball, the other balls, the non-rolled back balls, it doesn't work very well. I think we're smart enough people out there to develop a ball and club combination that kind of will even itself out again. And so you're going to have these kind of unicorn clubs that go well with the rollback balls, and then you got another disaster to work out. So this is just going to open up a can of worms that is going to be a huge, huge mess for manufacturers and everybody else on the planet. Please, 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 USGA, RNA, everybody else, stop. Just do this. Just halt the ball, manufacturer. Just say, we're good here. Stay here. Stop it. Stop. Don't do anything else. The ball is going to stay where it's at. We're not going to go any farther with it. Nothing. Let's just work on getting better so that the average player can hit more fairways, hit more greens. And then there'll be more equipment advantages and designs coming in the future, but maybe that'll be in shaft technology. Maybe the grips will get even better. Maybe we can look at other areas of the game, of our wedge game, to tighten it up, to give us more forgiveness around the greens where it actually counts for the average player. Let's halt. Stay. We're fine. Grow the grass. Do the other stuff. Let me know your thoughts. It's getting crazy out there. Thanks for listening. See you guys soon.